they took out a loan with riba. And I remember going to him and saying, don't do this, man. Fear Allah. It's not even like you don't know. You know it's haram. I'm in a sticky situation. Stuck. So bro, be patient. Have sabr. Allah will find a way out for you. They took the loan. When I say I never saw someone fall from so high so quickly, not just financially, in every way, shape, or form. The family got destroyed, split up, sicknesses, diseases, sihr, struggling till today. He took the loan.
Yeah.
Direct consequence.
Someone took out a loan for their business and then COVID happened, which affected their business, which weren't able to pay out the loan. And because there's so many things connected to it and the stress of it, they ended up committing suicide. You can't imagine the impact of that on the family, on the wife, on the kids, on the brothers, on the sisters. I mention it as an example, as if to say this is unique. It's not unique, it's normal, man. This happens all the time. People kill themselves all the time because of, why? Because they see the debts piling up and they know there's no escape. Every day it's getting worse and worse and worse. That will destroy your view of life. That's destroying your future, literally destruction of your future.
Assalamu alaikum guys. Before we begin, I really wanted to share some great news with you. So as I've been screaming at the top of my lungs for the last few months, we're on a mission to help bring about 1,000 righteous and rich Muslim millionaires. And the way that we've been trying to achieve this goal with Allah's permission is by providing sales and marketing solutions in two ways, either through educating business owners on how to grow their businesses from the sales and marketing perspective, or by just building out their entire marketing funnel and taking care of their lead acquisition, their sales, everything from click to close. And alhamdulillah, we've already seen so much success, and I wanted to share that with you. So we have young brothers joining our Righteous and Rich Skills Academy, and they're learning the skills of business and they're growing. They're getting their first high ticket sale, $1,000 close, $2,000 close, $2,000 close, $3,000 close, alhamdulillah. We've also got our clients on the click to close where we build everything out for them, such as brother Big Isa, who is now making double what he was making from his 9 to 5 online. We also have the New Fit brothers who, Allahumma barik, hit their first ever $10,000 a month. So alhamdulillah guys, if you want more information on how you can also get access to our sales and marketing solutions to grow your business so you can do the things that really matter in life, such as move to a Muslim country, give charity and take care of your family, then click on the link below. Click on the link for the Righteous and Rich Skills Academy if you want to learn and do it yourself but you want our support and training, and click on the link for the Scale initiative if you want to get on the phone to one of our team members to see if you qualify for us building this out for you from beginning to end. With that said, this is going to be a very important podcast, very serious topic. Let's begin. May Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum. Let's start.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Guys, welcome back to another episode of the Righteous and Rich podcast. Alhamdulillah, we have with us Shaykh Muaawiyah Tucker back again.
Thanks for having me again, alhamdulillah.
How you doing, Shaykh?
We are good, brother. We are good.
So last time we spoke about zakat.
Yeah.
And you mentioned in some ways the opposite of zakat is riba.
Yeah.
In a sense where zakat is the natural way of purifying your wealth. Oh, it follows the natural, your wealth naturally deteriorates and zakat helps purify and naturally deteriorate wealth that doesn't by its very own nature.
It's almost like a counterbalance to facilitate or allow money to behave like the rest of your wealth.
Right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned riba is the opposite. Riba, it inflates the wealth, or it creates wealth, it grows it in a way that's unnatural.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we wanted to dive into this in a bit more detail.
I mean, you can almost say not just unnatural, that undeserving, probably another way. Because you could say, for example, that your wealth, like your sheep and your cattle, that grows. Mm-hmm. If I have sheep, that sheep becomes, so those 2, 3, 5 sheep become 10, become 100. That grows.
Yeah.
But with effort. You have to do something.
Yes.
You have to maintain them, you have to look after them. You could say, I earned that because I looked after them.
Yep.
If you didn't look after them, they will die. You'd lose it.
So there's effort, there's merit.
There's merit involved. There's also risk involved.
Yeah.
Things could happen. You know, animals get sick, they die, plagues. Money doesn't do that. And on top of that, you're using the labor and the efforts of someone else to grow your capital without any risk. So they took on all the risk.
Yeah.
But you got paid for it.
So we're going to dive into the reality of riba and what it is in a lot of depth, right?
Yeah.
But I want to create inside of the people a desire to actually want to listen all the way towards the end.
Yeah.
So that they can actually understand what riba is and the different applications of riba in this day and age so we can avoid it. Mm-hmm. But that's the technical stuff. So let's start off by talking about why it's so bad in the first place, just so people can be motivated to stay towards the end.
Yeah. So, I mean, the hadith. First and foremost, Allah mentioned riba in the Quran and has forbidden riba from the Quran. So it's not just an issue of some may say, oh, it's a hadith or it's a practice or kind of stuff. It's actually mentioned quite explicitly in the Quran. It's also mentioned very explicitly in the Sunnah, and not only that, it has been attached or mentioned alongside other major sins. So, for example, like the hadith of the Messenger of Allah mentioned the 7 deadly sins, and which is an interesting thing actually, because even in Christianity they have 7 deadly sins as well.
Yeah.
They've made a film called Seven based on the 7 deadly sins. But if you compare the 7 deadly sins in Islam and the 7 deadly sins in Christianity, you find that fundamentally they're very different. In Christianity, 7 deadly sins are attached to the internal.
Yeah, the heart.
Just, greed, lust,
gluttony,
that kind of stuff. They're all attached to the internals.
Yeah.
Which actually reflects a lot of how Christians behave in terms of they kind of demonize your internals. Because fundamentally, we all have sin because you're born.
What do you mean they demonize internal? Sorry.
I mean, for example, and this is obviously not reflective of all Christians, but like in Catholics, you shouldn't really have intimacy with your family unless it's down to having children.
Family mean your wife?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless you're having children, because if you do it out of lust, it's sinful. It's your wife, bro.
Oh, you can't do it out of pleasure?
No.
According to them?
Yeah, because they have demonized pleasure.
Oh, crazy. Okay.
So they have this kind of, I mean, even the idea of celibacy, you're kind of demonizing the act of having family. They have this whole idea of a person looking at someone lustfully and then therefore they are sinful. So they have a lot of views towards the internal things in the mind, whereas Islam is actually the opposite. Islam acknowledges that you have thoughts in your mind, but doesn't have any particular hukum until you act upon it.
On that point, I read something interesting from Imam Ibn Qayyim that really, really, really blew my mind in his book Al-Fawaid. He was saying, he was talking about the what makes a person complete as a believer and a slave of Allah Azza wa Jal, but with regards to striking the balance between pleasure and worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and striking the balance between spiritual pleasure and physical pleasure.
Yeah.
So spiritual pleasure is obviously the pleasure that you receive from the Quran, the Sunnah, fasting, qiyamul layl, dhikr, right? Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'inul qulub. In the remembrance of Allah, the heights, they find peace, which obviously is the ultimate pleasure, right?
Yeah.
It's the Jannah in this life before the Jannah in the next, Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned. But he actually messed up with powerful. He said the most complete slave when it comes to worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who can strike the balance between complete pleasure or the peak of pleasure spiritually and also physically.
Yeah.
He said there's nothing wrong with enjoying the physical pleasures.
Yeah.
It's just that when they get in the way of the akhirah and when they cause you to disobey Allah in seeking after them.
Yeah.
But ultimately, Allah Azza wa Jal said in the Quran that He created all of the من حرم زينة الله التي أخرج لعباده والطيبات من الرزق قل هي للذين آمنوا في الحياة الدنيا خالصة يوم القيامة. Allah said, I created all of these things for you believers. This world, all of these worldly pleasures and all these, it's been made for you, specifically for you. Allah said, it's not even for the disbelievers, it's for you. To enjoy, to benefit from, right? And then the hadith of Prophet حُبِبَ إِلَيَّ مِن دُنْيَاكُمْ الطِّيبُ وَالنِّسَاء. So the things that have been made beloved to me from your dunya, i.e. dunya things, women and perfume. ولكن جعلت قرة عيني في الصلاة كما قال. But my heart finds coolness in the salah. So that concept of it's just so it's like the deen understands these are humans, human nature. I created them. Allah is saying I created them with these desires, and we actually get closer to Allah by enjoying these desires, as long as you don't transgress me and we do it in a way that's halal,
And don't forget our creator as well in the process.
Exactly. And thank Allah for that blessing.
100%.
In the process.
So that's essentially what you see the difference between one of the differences between Islam and, I guess you could say, some fractions of Christianity. I'm not going to say all, because as you know, Christians are very much different in their beliefs. But back to the issue of the 7 deadly sins. So if you look at all the 7 deadly sins in Islam, they're all actions.
Yeah.
There's none of them saying, oh, if you feel a certain way, there's a sin, there's a deadly sin. No, it's only if you do it, which is reflective of the hadith about the person who intends to do good and does the good. He gets the reward of that good multiplied by 10 times, by 700 times, and many, many more times. Whereas another person who intends to do good but doesn't do it, he gets one reward.
Yeah.
Where the person who intends to do evil and does it, and doesn't do it, and does do it, he gets one sin.
One sin.
And if he doesn't do it, he gets one reward. But the point here is the action is where we focus on and what you get the most reward for. And as for the not doing the sin, that's because you chose to leave off sin. So that's coming as the topic of what's called tark, or leaving of a deed. But anyway, back to the point. So the riba is mentioned as from the the 7 deadly sins. Straight after a shirk and zina, we have the topic of riba. That's quite huge. It wasn't mentioned at the end of the 7 things. It was mentioned right at the very beginning. So it's not a small thing, which many in our day and age, I mean, riba is like an everyday thing. I mean, is there a transaction that you can never escape? Is there an element of, I mean, look at what does our life constitute? Getting married, having a place, having a car, have work, you could say, and buying our daily needs. Put those 5 things. And riba is at every point. Marriage, people have to spend. I know in some countries they take out loans just to pay mahar. Not in the Western countries, but in Muslim countries they take out exorbitant loans.
No, I mean, like as in, I know Pakistanis do that in the West.
Oh, really? They still do that as well?
Oh, in the West.
Okay.
Someone asked for 20k mahar. Go take a loan.
Oh, there you go.
Go take a loan, brother. Go get it.
There you go.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, and if it's not for the mahar, it's for the cost of the wedding.
For the cost of the wedding, yeah. Then there's also in terms of the where you live. You can't get home now without interest. Your car, hire purchase.
Education,
riba. Work, and not so much you get paid. You get it is in riba in work. Ironically, there's a lot of work that does involve riba, unfortunately. But it's not that work involves riba. But how do you get paid? In your bank. In what currency? In fiat.
even buying a phone. Which we'll come to.
Yeah.
Which we'll come to towards the end.
So the point is that riba is everywhere. So because of its proliferation throughout our society, it's understandable that how people they wonder what's so wrong, what's so bad of it. Because think about it. Not only is it everywhere, but we benefit from it. I can now get married because of it. I can now get a house because of it. I can now get education because of it. I mean, everything I want to do, I can do it now. And I can only do it because of riba. So therefore, why is it so bad? That's the mental challenge. Why is it so bad? If everything I need to do and I want to do, I can do it with riba. That's the mental challenge which people have, and that's why it's so difficult. Whereas imagine we could do all the above without ever introducing interest. Then there wouldn't be such a need to make such a strong case.
So now how do we then? And by the way, I want to make it very clear. The questions that I'm going to ask right now, I'm asking them just from the angle of just like extra added benefit. But it suffices to say that Allah and His Messenger said it's haram.
Yeah.
And then that ends the conversation. And then after that, that's it. It's conversation done. We don't need to even necessarily know the wisdom or whatever. But I'm asking just now for extra added benefit and just further carrying on the conversation, the discussion. So then, Shaykh, how does one then navigate, right, in the avoidance of riba?
Yeah.
When it's like I can't do it, I can't even get a house or get married without taking out loans.
I think the first way to approach the navigating, I mean, because obviously we need to also discuss what riba is, but the first way to navigate around riba or around the society built on riba is to first acknowledge a very important reality, and that is there isn't necessarily a solution for everything. Meaning, some may say, bro, if I can't buy a house with interest, how am I supposed to buy a house then? What's the Islamic solution for buying a house? Because without interest, I can't buy a house. That's what he's saying to me. So my response will be, before even attempting to answer that question, you need to be content in your heart that maybe there isn't just a way. Maybe the way the world is at the moment, you just can't buy a house. If you're not happy with the reality,
Should I sleep on the streets then?
no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you set up the argument in your mind that there has to be a way, then you're gonna fail, because maybe it just isn't a way. For example, imagine brother says to you, bro, I met this sister at college or university and she's a good sister. I'm pious, she's pious. How can I get to marry her? The dad said no, mom said no, everyone says no, for whatever reason. I can't honestly look in his face and say, bro, there is a way. Bro, in your case, there actually may not be a way, bro. Maybe you just have to move on. And that's just a reality. And I think that's one of the things that people have to really come to terms with, that every situation is different. Maybe someone has a solution and other people don't have a solution, but you can't assume that Islam always has a solution for every single situation. Maybe in your circumstance, you just have to do other things.
Okay, but look, if I can't buy a house, what's the alternative? Because in people's mind, because these things...
Alternative to do what?
To having a place to live?
That's the thing. So that's the question.
Because all these things that you mentioned...
Do you need to own property to worship Allah?
But I need to own property to have shelter.
No, you don't. I can have shelter without owning property.
Some people say that. It sounded so stupid just saying that.
My point is that what is our purpose in life? To worship Allah.
To worship Allah.
Okay, how do you achieve that? For example, even I want to get married. What do I need to provide for my wife? I need to provide for her place to live, clothing, food, what kind of stuff. Okay, can you provide all of that without owning property? Yes, you can. Okay, there you go. You answered your question.
As in, you mean rent?
Renting, living with parents. You could also there are alternatives. It might not be what you want. But there are alternatives.
I'll give you an example, yeah, of this. So recently we have there's a client we're just about to sign on, and he basically wanted to create. He's a student of knowledge. He wanted to create a madrasa, online madrasa, to teach about Islamic studies, right? And what he was doing is he was trying to raise £68,000 to get an Android app made, an iOS app made, and a website app made.
That's very expensive, but go on.
Right? So, and he was going to wait 2 years creating all this content before it's released.
Yeah.
And he was struggling. Like,
yeah.
People didn't want to give him the money.
Yeah.
Palestine, what's happening is happening there. We've got Syria, we've got Kashmir, we've got calamities all over the world. People thinking, I need to send my money over there. So I was like, bro, you don't need an app. There's a tool called School, which is basically like a social media for people that want to teach and educate.
Yeah.
Right. So it's more than Udemy. Right. So it's like a social media platform where people basically just imagine a Facebook group, but it's for people that want to buy and sell courses, who want to sell courses and also do like live calls and have a community. It's like everything that app would do, you can have it there.
Yeah.
And it costs $99 a month.
Yeah.
There you go. You can start today.
Yeah.
So at the beginning,
and then when he's made a name for himself, he's built up his brand. Then he can move to, and he's got capital. Yeah. Then he can move to other things.
You may not even need to.
Yeah.
The thing is, there are people right now that can build out their own apps. They're just using this platform because it's just way more convenient. Yeah. So the point is that, and we were actually discussing the importance of just having a mindset of like being flexible and pragmatic.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what's the ultimate goal that I want? Like, is the ultimate goal I just want property, or is it that I need shelter?
I mean, I do believe at some level, and I know many won't agree with me. They want to argue me on this point, but I do believe that at some level it's about prestige. And don't get me wrong. I fully believe that deep down, if you remove all things, all external factors, and just get to the raw point, it's prestige that I have property. Because, for example, I always give this example to people, I've mentioned it many times. If you had no money, babe, and you wanted property, great. I say to you, go find something. Okay, you found a place, it costs £1 million, but I ain't got £1 million. Fair enough. Here you go, bro. I've just deposited £1 million in your bank account. Exactly what you need to buy the property. It's there in your bank account. Would you go and buy the house?
No.
Guaranteed you won't buy the house.
Using that million on some other stuff.
There you go.
Yeah.
But if I said to you, bruv, you got nothing in your bank account, I acknowledge that. But what I'll do, I'll give you a mortgage, 30 years, pay me back in installments. You can buy the house. I'll buy the house.
Because spending money doesn't have, it's less painful.
Not just that. I'm just saying that you had the opportunity right here to buy a property. If you had, if the exact amount you had was the exact value of the house, why did you still not do that? If the real issue was I need the property, remember the word is need. If you really need the property, then you have the means to get what you need, but yet you still chose otherwise.
Otherwise, yeah.
Which indicates that it's not just about needing property. There are other things involved.
Other things involved.
We'll get back to the issue of that scenario, because that scenario reveals a very important thing about the evil effects. So you mentioned about evil effects of interest on society. Why is it that he was so quick to press the button on that mortgage when available, but so hesitant when he had the cash to buy it outright? Psychologically, what's going on in his mind? Because when you spend money that you don't have, you make different decisions. And if you actually scratch the surface, you realize that those decisions aren't necessarily good decisions. Which is why, at a societal level, in use of interest of riba, if just imagine what would that do to society in terms of how we make decisions as a society? It completely changes.
Yeah.
And I will say for the worse, not for the better, for the worse, you become more irresponsible. You make, like I said, if I gave you the exact amount of money to buy the house, the first thing you would do is look at cheaper options. So maybe I spend half on that on a cheaper house, smaller house, or maybe a flat, and another half to do business or something else. You would never spend all your capital on property. That's why I even say to people, look, really and truly, if you got money and you haven't got property, I wouldn't even advise you buying property unless that property costs you about 20%, 5 to 20% of your net worth. Because if you're spending anything more than 50%, you're crazy. You're almost crippling yourself. I mean, depending on how much money you have, but you're almost crippling yourself, meaning that you're spending all this money on this thing that you don't really need, when you can actually use that money for something else. I mean, think about it. Imagine you had £1 million in your bank account right now. You can go somewhere. You can retire, brother. Think about that. How old are you now?
34.
34. Bruv, if I said to you, you could retire at 34 or buy a house and work for the rest of your life, what would you choose?
Retire.
Therefore, back to the question, I need property. Do you really need property? If I could retire you right now, but not have a property, would you choose that? I think everyone would choose that. So really and truly, it's not what we think it is. But you have to remember that you have to acknowledge it. You have to remember and acknowledge that the idea of buying and owning property has been pushed ideologically for decades, way before we were born. It's something on a societal level has been pushed by the government, by the bank. I mean, one guy is this kafir. another kafir. I did it on the last video. Another guy, he mentioned some Cardone, something like that. Anyway, he said that
Grant Cardone.
but maybe that's his name. He won his properties.
Yeah.
He mentioned
Cardone
that.
Capital.
Yeah, he does. He said that the product of the banks is property. Think about it. Banks won't exist. High street banks wouldn't exist without property.
I've seen that video. Yeah.
They wouldn't exist without property. If there was, why? Because they have nothing to sell then.
Yeah.
Because really and truly, property is the only really big investment we all make. I mean, business. If you have big business,
it's the most expensive thing
that
that's purchased by most people.
By most people, yeah. And they need something to tie you down. They don't make money on your interest in your iPhone. I mean, you reckon how much do you reckon they make on an iPhone? 50 quid, 100 quid. I mean, I know someone who bought property in 1980s in London for 60 or 80,000 pounds. That was the value of it. When they finished the mortgage, it was over 300 and something thousand pounds. So that means the bank made 300,000 pounds on that.
In interest?
Yeah.
No, that's nuts.
Yeah.
That's nuts. Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nuts.
So, and if you add to that, the further damage is that money that an interest on was created at thin air. So that's another discussion. Refer to our video about money or Bitcoin. But it's not just, it wasn't to do with their money that they gave you and then they earn interest on that money. They gave you money that was created the moment you signed that paper. The money wasn't there before.
As in, you mean the 60,000 they gave you at the beginning?
Yeah. So you go to the bank to buy a property.
Oh, so you're saying they okay, break it down for people.
You go to a bank to buy property. You say, I want this house. This costs £60,000 or whatever. They say, Taib, here's a contract. Here's a duration. Here's the terms. Blah 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 blah. Sign it, and you get the property. Meaning, when you sign it, we will give you the £60,000, and then you would give that £60,000 to the property owner. The deeds will be transferred from them to you. The deeds will be held with the bank so that make sure that you pay the money back, because if you don't, then they'll take the house off you. But the deeds is still in your name, just held by the bank, and you pay on the interest. That £60,000 they gave you, it wasn't from someone else. It was created there and then. By you signing that signature, you created new money that didn't exist before. So they're essentially making £300,000.
Didn't they? Isn't it that they take
No. That's the myth that most people believe. That's not how money works. No.
But isn't it like the treasury that makes the money?
No. That's not how banks work. Banks issue you new credit, new money.
No, you have to bring this again, because this is.
Let's try to be brief.
This is the same as when it spun me when the day when I realized that money is not actually based on gold anymore.
No, yeah.
It's one of them realization moments.
It is so because we have to get back to the issue of riba. It is connected to riba, but it's a deep one. So let's give a scenario. Yeah. Let's imagine that there's a bank.
Yeah.
It's a brand new bank.
Okay.
And it has zero capital, no money in the bank. Yeah.
Okay.
Taib. So then I'm the first customer. I walk in and I deposit my £100. I open a bank account, Taib. They give me a bank account, and I deposit £100 in the bank, Taib.
Yeah.
So now the bank has in the bank £100.
Okay.
That is yours.
Okay.
Taib. So you have a debit card, and you have an account, and it says in your account £100.
Okay. And no one else has deposited money in this.
Yeah, that's it. That's all it has. Now, guy number 2, he walks in, opens the bank account, and says, "Look, I want to make a loan. I want to borrow from you £100. Yeah?" And I said, "Okay, cool. Here's a contract, you sign it." And now in his bank account is £100. So how much money is in the bank account?
200.
Do you see that now? You got £100 to the £100 in there from person A and £100 to person B. Both of them when they look into their bank account, they see £100 each.
Nuts.
So therefore, the bank has taken in £100 deposit, but it has also created another £100.
But isn't it that they're using his money to? If you
Brother, listen carefully.
Okay.
The issue of the user thing. Let's look at it this way. If it was the issue of using the money, then they will say then the bank will say to person number 1, by the way, I'm going to use your money and lend it to someone else, meaning you no longer have access to that money. And if that was the case, you say, okay, yes or no, I don't want that. I want my money, whatever. But they don't ever say that, because that's not what happens. He has full access to his £100, and he has full access to his £100.
In theory.
In reality.
But if everyone was to go and pull their money out of the bank,
then it will collapse.
it'll collapse.
But the point still is, in reality, I'm using my debit card, he's using the debit card.
Okay, yep, I get you.
Yep. So
That's
in
insane.
bank accounts, so people think that there's this whole narrative that the government, they print all money, and how did they have the right to print money? But what people don't realize,
Banks do the same.
not just do the same, they do most of it. 97% of all money in circulation was created exactly this way, through loans.
Actually insane.
Only 3% of money, or about that much, is actually from the government. The rest of it is from high street banks.
Okay, so then this is a point that I feel like maybe it's come back down to the wisdoms why riba is so heavily prohibited in Islam.
Well, the thing is that this scenario is actually worse than riba, but we're gone.
So my point is, because we're so financially and economically illiterate these days that we don't realize the negative consequences of things like what you just explained.
Yeah.
So if 95% of money in circulation has just been created out of thin air, right? How does that negatively impact mankind? or a society, or
So
at the very least.
I know some people are going to think to themselves, we started talking about riba, then we got to the seven deadly sins, and now we're talking about banks.
It is all connected.
It is all connected. It's all connected. Let's try to bring it back. So the issue of the seven deadly sins. So number one, Allah and His Messenger have mentioned that riba is haram. We get that, and it has also equated. So it has mentioned riba alongside other major sins like magic and zina kind of stuff. Okay, that's bad. On its face, that's bad.
Yeah.
But also, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has described interest as being like, he said that the riba interest is 70 odd branches. The lowest form and the lowest level of that sin is like a person who sleeps with his own mother. So no, that exact scenario is not just about sin, because sleeping with your mother is obviously sinful, but it's also the disgusting nature of it. I mean, because that's something we can almost agree on, that that's raw. that's
Nasty.
That's nasty. What do you mean sleep with your mum? And I think that's intended, because the Messenger of Allah could have given any example of sin, but it had to be an example which is so repugnant that it doesn't require much further explanation. It's like the person who asked the Messenger of Allah permission to commit zina, and he asks, would you give permission for someone to zina with your own family, with your own sister? I.e., he could have just said no, and that would be the end of it. But he wanted him to understand on an emotional level. Yeah, but
It's nasty.
you want to do zina, it's the same as someone else doing that with your own
It's
sister.
like with backbiting.
Yes.
يحب أحدكم أن يأكل لحم
أخيه ميتا. Yeah, just like that.
Right? Would any of you like to eat the flesh of his dead brother?
Perfect.
It's just equated.
It's something that is so ubiquitous. It's so acknowledged to be nasty. It doesn't require further explanation. So that's
But then, Shaykh,
so that's the basis of riba on an Islamic level. That it's a repugnant act. It's disgusting. And if you want to try and understand exactly how disgusting it is, here's an analog, a metaphor of how similar or how bad it is. But ironically, if you look at the text, it doesn't necessarily touch upon the economics, which is what many people today think about. Okay, how does it harm the economy now?
yeah.
And this is the interesting thing I think.
Okay.
we need to focus on is that, and this almost touches upon what I said earlier on about maybe there isn't a solution for everything. Is that we have to recognize that even if there isn't an economic harm, it's still repugnant. So let me give an example. If I was to try and justify zina, or justify the evilness of fornication, and I say, oh, because it spreads STDs and it does this and it does that, then one may think to themselves, okay,
If it doesn't, then
it's fine. Or how about if they consent?
But the very
How about
nature of this act is filthy.
Yeah, because we have to understand there's a basis, there's a fundamental hukum, there's a fundamental rule in here we're trying to establish, which should underpin the rest of it. Yes, there may be economic harms, but it also may be economic benefits. And I say this to many people, even non-Muslims. I say to them, look, to steel man the argument, I can acknowledge for the sake of argument that maybe interest is beneficial economically. Maybe a society will be better off with interest. It's still repugnant, because our belief of the prohibition of interest is not dependent on its economic benefit or harm, and we shouldn't even think about it from economic benefit or harm. Just like fasting, one could make an argument, oh, if you fast,
Healthy
kind of stuff,
toxins
and all that.
Yeah.
But even if it's slightly harmful, it's still wajib. And I think this is where we need to build from, and we should understand that this, even if there isn't that, this is how we should look at it. And I think there is a wisdom in the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or in Allah not actually specifying any of the specific economic benefits or harm, because what happens if that's not there? In opposed to, for example, things like even look at the example of the ayah. Yes, يسألونك عن الخمر والميسر. They ask you about alcohol and gambling. So that's something Muslims don't really do. Gambling, they don't really do alcohol, doba, that kind of thing. We don't really get involved in that kind of stuff. Generally speaking, in the West, maybe in Turkey is different, or other countries, their culture is different to us, the thing. But generally speaking, the Muslims in the UK are kind of understand. It's like pork and alcohol; those two things that We get it. But Allah says, قُل, say, O Muhammad, to the people, فِيهِمَا إِثْمٌ كَبِيرٌ. In both of the alcohol and the gambling, there is a big sin. But also, مَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ. There's benefits to the people. And what's interesting here about the ayah, before we continue in a minute, I'll finish the ayah in a minute, but he said, إِثْمٌ كَبِيرٌ. A big sin. Ithm is an Arabic term referring to sin, and it's singular. And then Allah says, وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ.
Plural.
And there's benefits. Not manfa'a, not one benefit.
Benefit.
Not even manfa'atan, not even two benefits. But manafi'. So at the very least, in terms of number, there's at least three benefits that we can get from alcohol and gambling. At the very least, there's three benefits from alcohol and gambling compared to the one harm of the two. But Allah says, وَإِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا. But the sin of both of them, the single sin of gambling and alcohol, is way greater than all the benefits combined. So from that bab here, and that's basically that was just alcohol and gambling, which isn't from the mubiqat, the deadly sins. So imagine something which is from the deadly sins. Even if we can say that there's so much benefit in getting yield on your fiat, there is a sin, bruv. Whatever the sin is mawjood, it is there. And it is so significant that the lowest equivalent of that is sleeping with your own mother. That's the lowest equivalent of that. So that's just, so that hopefully that will establish the premise of why we should stay away from riba, because whatever it is deep. Whatever it is, it's huge.
Just very quickly, I know watching these podcasts and these videos is really probably inspiring you to help take your business to the next level. And sometimes you can feel stuck, not knowing exactly how to do that. If so, I wanted to show you how we've been doing that for some of our clients. Brother Munir from Modern Muslim Man, he actually mentioned that after joining us, he increased his monthly income by 50%. Brother Isa, alhamdulillah, mentioned that had it not been for the lessons that he learned through The Righteous and Rich service that we provide, he wouldn't have been able to do his launch, where he got over 60 people to sign up in about 24 hours, which is pretty phenomenal. Allah Mabarak. Brother Fawaz, he actually sent me a message. He was a brother that I did some consultancy for, and may Allah reward him. He said that he sold out his program in record time twice by implementing two of the advices that I gave him, bringing in $40,000 in cash collected, with an extra $20,000 that's about to come in, inshallah ta'ala, in subsequent days. These are just some of the examples of some of the wins that we're helping our brothers get through the services that we provide for them. Just to be clear, although the brothers, they thanked us and showed gratitude and appreciation, this was all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I showcase this with you because, of course, we live in a day and age where trust is at an all-time low. And I want to be able to offer our services and our solutions to you so you can also make this type of money and see these type of successes as well. For that reason, I'm sharing this with you to earn your trust so that hopefully I can then earn your business, so I can then serve you and my team can serve you. We've got two options. We've got the Righteous and Rich Skills Academy, where we can teach you the skills and the training that you need to do it yourself and for your team, where you have training and access to me and my team who can do live calls and help solve your problems on a pretty much daily basis, except for twice a week. And we've also got a service where we build out your funnels for you. We can provide pretty much any marketing growth solution you need, from building out funnels, offers, paid social media, Google ads, SEO. We've teamed up with some of the most elite digital marketers in the entire world who provide these services on a global enterprise level to some of the biggest companies in the world, and now they're going to be able to serve you that same level of service, inshallah ta'ala. So before we get back to the discussion, if you want to learn the skills and have the support from me and my team to help coach you along the way, the Righteous and Rich Skills Academy, if you want us to help just build this stuff out for you, then book a call with one of our team members, inshallah ta'ala, and hopefully we can make this happen. The second one requires, just a heads up, the second one is purely only for business owners, and of course it does require a significant investment to be able to kind of, have that type of service from us. With that said, let's get back to the discussion, inshallah.
I'm gonna ask you one question.
Yeah.
You don't have to answer it.
Yeah.
And I can cut it out. But I feel like it will be pertinent.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned a hadith earlier, the one about the lowest part of riba being like a man sleeping with his mum, right?
Yeah.
There's people in America, in Texas.
Don't get too specific, bro.
Yeah, I won't get any more specific than that. But they make they mentioned the hadith is weak. Some have weakened it.
Yeah.
So now I just don't want anyone to undermine what we've said here, because obviously we started off with the textual evidences first, then we built up all these other arguments, and I don't want someone to then just be like, oh, but the thing that you started off in the first place is weak.
Yeah.
So how would you respond to that?
So, Ilm al-Hadith is not my speciality. I do know that there's some kalam on that one, and I did go into the details of that in my video on that one. But again, it not be my specialty. I don't actually remember the details of it. But even if one wants to say that it is not as that a particular hadith isn't halal, we still can't deny the fact that it's mentioned as the mubiqat. It's mentioned alongside shirk.
Yeah.
It's mentioned alongside sihr. It's mentioned
Which are both worse than sleeping with your mum.
Which are both worse than sleeping with your mum. And it's mentioned alongside zina. And I think if my memory serves correctly, I think it comes after sihr or after riba. It's either number 3 or number 4. So it already is quite bad as it is. So I don't think anyone can deny that it's from the kaba'ir al-dhunub.
Not just that. Allah has said, I'm going to war with you.
There you go.
Which we didn't mention in the beginning, but
Yeah, there you go.
if Allah goes to war with you, you're mashed. No, but that's so scary.
But again, that's a good point. So the point is,
You're mashed.
there's no point really nitpicking, oh, this particular hadith, this particular wording about this particular sin is da'if. Yeah, but we can't ignore the fact that it is an established fact.
Yeah.
It's still a kabir min kaba'ir al-dhunub, still one of the major sins. And mubiqat, the definition of mubiqat, the things that destroys your deeds. So I mean, you can't ignore that fact. It still destroys your deeds.
You know the thing that I just can't fathom. It's like when Allah is saying He's going to war with you if you do riba, and Allah also said يَمْحَقُ اللَّهُ الرِّبَا. Allah is destroying riba, and all of the things that you want to use riba for are like the very beginnings of major things in your life. For example, marriage. For example, house. Not
only that, it affects your actions moving forward for years. Yeah, and actually, if you think about it on a historical level, on a societal level, I think Islam is the only example in history where a religion has actually prohibited riba. Every other religion allows it at some level. Even the Yahud, they say it's prohibited amongst themselves, but they allow it with other people.
Yeah.
And the Christianity, they didn't allow it initially, but they kind of changed it. But you find that I find that an interesting thing that there's a thing about in Islam, or this what comes from Allah, that it has focused in on this one thing that you don't find anywhere else. And I believe that there's a wisdom in that. Meaning, if we acknowledge that other religions are essentially made up, or from shaitan, or whatever the case may be, they haven't seen or observed necessarily the harms of riba. So it's fully possible that maybe the real significant harms are not necessarily mahsus. It's not easily
empirically verifiable.
Yes.
Or
so it's almost
observable.
Exactly. So therefore we can take that as being fully ilahi. You can almost say it's fully ilahi. That there is definitely a harm in it that you probably don't understand or observe fully yet, but it definitely is there. But back to the issue of economics, so there is an economic harm.
But that's what I'm saying. So for me, like, the observable harm is really clear.
Yes.
It's oppression, right?
Yes and no.
It keeps people in debt.
Yes and no.
Right?
Yes and no. The reason why I say yes and no is because there's a reason why the church allowed it eventually. And the reason why it became prevalent in a society that is supposed to be a Christian society is because an argument can be made for it. I'm not saying a good argument. I'm saying an argument can be made for it. So I'm not going to get to the argument, but an argument can be made for it. So that's what I'm trying to say is that...
Please get into it. I'm really...
What they say is the way I guess that's a good point, because it kind of brings us back to the issue of what is money.
Yeah.
So if I was to lend you tools, I lend you my car, allow you to live in my property, you are using my asset.
Okay.
And I'm charging you essentially a fee for the use of my asset because I can't use it. Because you're using it, I can't use it. And therefore there is an exchange of value for the use of the asset.
Yeah.
And with money, it's not just the use of the asset, there's the fact that I can't access that capital, essentially speaking. The capital, I'm no longer able to spend it because you're spending it. And therefore, essentially you're paying for that time preference, that time premium, because they call it a time premium. The longer you're using it, the more I'm deserving of money. So if you look at it from that aspect, you might think to yourself, wait, that's true, you know, Islam, you're allowed to rent things out. So why can't I rent out my money? Because money is not a commodity. And that's the main difference. Money is it's a complete, like we mentioned in the zakah thing, it's a completely different fish. You don't have money to sit on it, to sleep on it, to live in it. Money is only used to exchange something.
Yeah.
It's its only function.
And if you inflate the means of exchange or the tool they use to exchange, people will buy things that they don't actually have the resources to purchase in the first place.
Take that point, put a pin in it.
Okay.
Let's come back to it, because that's going to tie into something else.
Okay.
So just to conclude the issue. So we spoke about the issue of riba being haram on a spiritual level, and how it is a huge sin. And we understand exactly how big the sin is. It's just a huge sin. Okay, great. And there are economic harms, and we can discuss that as well. We didn't really discuss the economic harms, but we kind of understand that.
We're going to come to it.
Yeah, so there are economic harms.
Podcast.
Yeah, this is a long one. There are economic harms attached to riba. So the observable ones would be the fact that essentially I would say you're earning capital without the associated risk attached to the activity of earning capital. So any activity of earning capital and growing your wealth involves risk. Involves the fact that the capital might not go up, it may actually go down, may just stay stationary. Like I mentioned earlier on about the cattle. I want to grow cattle, but those cattle might die. I might have a plague, I might lose them. I wanna rent out my my property, Airbnb. So I buy a property, I rent it out. They may trash the place, they may burn it down. Things could happen. Things could happen to your assets that made. There's the upkeep. There's always risks involved in every business transaction.
But in giving money as a loan and making money, if that is no risk, you're saying?
Well, essentially, if I've given you money, I now have a liability. You owe me. There's a right. How do you destroy a right? How do you nullify a right? The right is there. You owe me that money, which is actually interesting. Why? Interesting because the whole system is built on riba. They had to introduce bankruptcy laws because there was inherent contradiction to their system. When they first decided to introduce this whole idea of interest and borrowing, that kind of the whole system, they never had bankruptcy laws. So what happens is that people get into debt, and you have debtors jail. In the UK, there will be a jail just for those who can't pay their debts, which also exists in other countries, like Muslim countries. So there was debts attached to, or there was a jail term attached to you not paying your debts. Or historically speaking, if you couldn't pay your debts, then you just forever accrue interest, which eventually leads to slavery. Many tribes and nations became actual slaves because they were unable to pay back their debts. So historically, it was just a loan, and you owe me, and it's a liability, and it remained until you paid it back. There's no way to get rid of it. The only institutionalized bankruptcy laws, i.e. the ways to wipe that away, because otherwise it was unsustainable. It revealed the fact, that in itself revealed the unsustainability
Of riba.
Because
People are not going to be able to pay it back.
No, that's it. Here's it. And not only, and the reason why they can't, let's actually not forget that important point. The main reason why they can't pay it back is because with that time, it increases. If it was a fixed amount, I can actually work towards that fixed amount.
But it's compounding.
I'm paying back. It's like I saw a tweet the other day where one guy was complaining that how he's been spending £300 every month. So at the beginning of the year, he mentioned something like his student loan was like £1,000 or like £10,000. And every month he was paying 300 quid out of his wages. And by the end of the year, his student loan is now 11,000. It's like, how did they go up? I'm paying it off, but it's still going up because he's not paying more than what he's accruing.
It's disgusting.
It's growing faster than he paid it back.
I'm saying but Shaykh, that for me is a clear-cut wisdom and harm. That's mahsoos, tangible.
Harm for who?
For the people, for
one party, yes.
But that's the thing, isn't it? Like, Islam prohibits oppression, and oppression is always one party Oppressing another party.
Yeah, but then now you come down to the philosophy of what does oppression even mean? One day they could argue you're oppressing the owner of capital. He gave his money, and now you're preventing him from getting his money back. You oppressed him.
No, for us, oppression is what Allah and His Messenger said.
Yeah, I'm not denying that. I'm just saying that if you just say he's been oppressed,
right, to place something in its inappropriate place.
yes. But again, I'm just saying, look at it from a non-biased perspective, non-Islamic direction. They could say, look, he had an agreement. They both agreed to these terms. You've now come in with your Islam, Quran stuff and trying to tell these guys what to do. But they both agreed to these terms. He agreed to do that and he agreed to accept that. So to oppress them will be to break that contract. See, do you understand that? Now, that argument is based on the premise, listen carefully, this is important, based on the premise that if two people agree, then they should leave them to it. Islam doesn't agree to that premise.
Which I guess is underpinned by individualism, liberalism.
Yeah. But Islam doesn't agree with that. I.e., if you wanted to cut off your penis and become a woman, you're right to do so. It's your body. But Islam says, no, you can't.
Yeah.
I mean, you live in that body, but you can't do what you want with it. Because there are people around you. There are things, there's society around you. You can't do what you want with everything. You have limitations. That's where Islam and you could say a wider views around maybe may differ in that regards. Anyway, back to the issue of the contract. So Allah mentioned specifically about riba, that when one of the last ayat that revealed that during the Hajj time, the Hajj of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that return the principal.
Yeah, give
back what you owe initially, and leave off the riba, leave off the increase, which was a edict, was a law revealed from the heavens, breaking that contract. So we could say as an argument against that, said they both agreed on that.
But the king,
Allah broke that.
Broke it. He didn't fasakh.
Yeah, Allah brought it. And again, we can say Allah brought it because it was inherently evil. And when we say inherently evil, not because, again, evil because Allah determined it to be evil. Not because of your philosophical massaging of the facts and making it, but they agreed, whatever. Allah has determined as an absolute objective approach that this contract is evil and therefore it should be broken. So if any person who agrees on an interest contract and then they come to you after the fact, they said, brother, how do we fix this? We have a clear-cut way how you fix it. We would return the principal and leave off the increase.
I think it's just like the Sahabi who had more than 4 wives when the ayah came down that you can marry only 4, and then he said, yeah, so what do I do? I have more, and the Prophet said, pick 4.
Choose 4, and then that's how you rectify.
That's how you rectify.
Yeah. So whatever happened, khalaf, whatever salaf is whatever has happened before, we've forgiven. You didn't know, now you know. So back to the issues, that there are societal issues, and then ironically, what we're witnessing right now in society right now is the the slow train wreck of global economies, primarily Western economies. Well, actually, I won't say primarily. It's not primarily, but there is, for example, the American debt has now reached for the first time $35 trillion.
Nuts.
And that's just only one part of their debt. That's not there are other debts they have, not that one alone.
Who are they in debt to? The banks? Companies?
That's another discussion. Let's not get off tangent. But they owe money, basically. But in brief, governments issue bonds.
Okay.
People buy those bonds. Yeah. And that's where the debt is. So the bondholders, this is what they owe to the bondholders, whoever those bondholders are. You could be a bondholder if you want to. You can have the bank, the US government owe you money.
No, thank you.
But I'm just saying that they owe money to the bondholders, whoever owns these bonds. So, and because of that, you have what's called some argue that it causes the debt cycle, the debt cycle, or booms and busts in the economy. Booms and busts in the economy. You get booms when interest is given out, and you have busts when they can't pay it back, and you have this constant up and down where it's good and that you have collapses, and it's good and you have a collapse. That's another example of the harms of interest.
Is there a direct correlation between poverty and interest?
I I mean, that's a
maybe not direct, but
that's a broad question because you have to define what poverty is. For example, let me give you an example. I'm sure.
Okay, let me not say poverty. Is there a correlation between Western countries in placing high interest rates on countries that are not currently thriving, and then not being able to thrive as a result of those interest rates that put on?
That's not what happens. So again, this is a bit of a complicated question, but interest rates are set by central banks.
Mm-hmm.
Every country has their own central bank. Even Muslim countries like UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, they all have their own central bank, and they set interest rates for whatever reason. Don't get into it now. And those interest rates could be high and it could be low.
Yeah.
Okay,
not necessarily the rates, but interest. Riba.
Yeah.
Like as in, I come to a country, let's just say a country in Africa, which is filled with resources, right? It's filled with resources, natural resources. It doesn't make sense to me why that country is not thriving. Because they've got so many resources that the world is in need of. But they're not able to thrive. You see people, there's poverty on the streets, there's this, there's that.
That's because you're not you're acknowledging one aspect of wealth and not acknowledging the other aspect.
Which is?
Human capital.
As in, what do you mean? As in the guys that are working to dig up
the
natural resources?
So, what really is the wealth of the Western nations? Because considering it isn't really to do with natural resources.
Technology?
That's human capital, knowledge.
Okay.
Knowledge, skills. Mm-hmm. That's actually the main wealth, actually, to be honest. Not actually, people think that natural resources is what costs because that's what you can actually see the price of it. But how do you value human capital? There's not price.
How to extract it, how to put it.
I mean, just to be crude, if you have a slave that has no skills whatsoever, and you have another slave that is like a world-renowned trader who makes billions a day, and you both on the market, how much do you reckon one slave would be cost and another slave would cost? I mean, we don't know. We don't put a price on humans because slavery is not a practice anymore. But I'm saying because we don't have that, we don't realize the value of human capital. So, for example,
the way to understand is jobs, right? A guy who doesn't have.
Let me give you an example.
You pay
one person
for the one who has.
One person gave an example of this, like in Uganda, when Idi Amin kicked out the Gujarati, because apparently they were taking over the country or had all the wealth of the country. So he essentially took their wealth and kicked out the Gujaratis. Mm-hmm. They left, and where they left, statistically they thrived anyway. They left with nothing, but where they went, they still made money and they thrived and they recovered. Whereas Uganda itself didn't. They took the money, but the country effectively collapsed. Why is it that taking of the money didn't help them, but those who money was taken from, they weren't really, I mean, they were harmed, but they weren't long-term harmed because what they took with them was their skills and their knowledge. Mm-hmm. All they had was just the capital. So Africa is rich in resources, but not rich in capital, in human capital. You don't have the training, you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have these things, they don't have the part that makes the country technically rich. So that's what they're trying to do now. That's what China and other countries are investing heavily in even ironically, UAE is actually the biggest investor of all the countries in Africa, the continent, ironically.
More than China now? Because I don't know.
Yeah, it is actually. And look at the money base. Because China's been doing a lot of building, but actually UAE is
putting the most money in.
Yeah, into Africa. But the point is, if you were to build up the infrastructure, if you actually build up the human capital of Africa, then it's game over for the West, because they have both the physical wealth, and if they have the human wealth, then that's it. They can manufacture their own chips, they can manufacture their own cars, manufacture.
But would they be able to? Because they're in debt to the West.
No, hold on. Putting that aside, I'm just saying if they had the human capital, i.e. the factories, the skill set, the training, the knowledge, the infrastructure.
But let's suppose they do.
Hold on. I'm saying if they had all of that, then there's no need for them to import all these things. So the Western countries, like your Fords and your Audis and your Apple and your Google and your Alphabet, all these companies, they are selling Africa what they can't produce themselves.
I think that's why China's thriving, isn't it? Because they have the human capital, isn't it? They make their own cars, they make their own phones.
That is why China has essentially, according to all metrics, surpassed America right now. because they have the human capital, they have the factories, they have the training, they are the manufacturing hub of the world. Whereas America essentially de-industrialized. We're going way off tangent off riba, but yeah, de-industrialized. But back to the issue of riba. So there's definitely harms in riba. One of the main harms of riba, and on an economic level, and this is where we stop onto it, because we have to actually discuss what riba is. The main economic harm of riba is that you are effectively spending your future today. That's the reality of riba, because you are going into a contract to pay someone X amount in the future. That means the money you are going to make in the future, you are essentially getting it today.
And if you spend it today, what do you have for tomorrow?
Well, that's the reality of what happen now. So eventually, which is what you see now in terms of countries. How do countries take out debt? For example, that $35 trillion of debt that America has, when do they have to pay it back? Is it open forever? No, it isn't. These debts have fixed terms. They have a date where it has to be paid back. So why doesn't it get paid back? It does. What they do is that they issue new loans to pay back the old loans. So they do what's called rolling over the debt. So essentially, it's more like
another loan for someone else to pay that one off.
Yes. So that loan,
that one, they take another loan from a guy to pay off the previous guy.
Yeah. And every time they do that, the hole gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper.
And then what happens?
Well, effectively, you'd have to go bankrupt. Effectively, which some countries do, like Argentina. Many countries have gone bankrupt and said, look, you know what, I owe you money, but it's gone.
What happens when a country goes bankrupt?
But there's two ways of going bankrupt. There's two ways a country can go bankrupt. There's a soft bankruptcy and there's a hard bankruptcy. The hard bankruptcy, we all know. I can't pay it. There you go.
Did Greece also go bankrupt?
They got bailed out at some level. There's a hard bankruptcy. Basically, they say I can't pay you back. So therefore, they'll be blacklisted. They won't be able to raise more capital in the future. No one will give them loans anymore. There are repercussions, but there are effectively bankruptcy laws. Or the other ways, get bombed and taken over, and then you have a puppet government put in place who would get a new loan to pay the old loan. There are things that happen, but that's a hard bankruptcy. Basically, it can't happen, but you all know. But then there's a soft bankruptcy, which is whereby you effectively inflate your currency away. If you have a loan,
this is soft bankruptcy.
Yeah, basically, if you have a loan to pay back, so imagine I borrowed money from you in dollars, and I have to pay you back in dollars. But the money I am paying you back in is the money you issue. So the one way that you can effectively pay it back without really paying it back is by printing more dollars. But by printing more dollars, I'm effectively deflating the value of dollars. So effectively, I lent you $1,000 and you pay me back $1,000. But $1,000 is now worth less than it was at the beginning.
Because you've deflated.
Because I deflated the currency.
In terms of purchasing power.
Yeah.
The $1,000 I gave you, you could do more with it
at the beginning.
The time I had given it to you.
Than you can do now.
When you paid it back to me 5-10 years.
So effectively, the government can say, I paid you back. But you haven't really paid them back because they actually effectively got back less than they gave back. That's called a soft default, whereby the currency hyperinflates away. It basically inflates to nothingness. So you get your money back, but if in nominal terms, in actual unit value, I get my the amount back. But in terms of purchasing power, it's worth nothing. That's a soft default, whereby I haven't broken the contract. I've given you money back.
So these things, I feel like people struggle to understand them. On the ground, if that's happening at the top, how's that affecting us on a day-to-day society?
Well, your money's getting destroyed. That affects you. So that's put it that way.
What does that mean that my money's getting destroyed?
So put it this way. Back to the issue I just said to you, that you're selling you're spending your future today. So imagine a government took out, like what happened in Bangladesh recently. There was a coup or whatever took place. Whether you want to, let's not go into the politics of it. But basically, there was a change of government. That's the most political way of saying it. There's a change of government. And what was the first thing that new government did? Take out a loan from IMF. But that was the whole point anyway.
IMF is?
International Monetary Fund.
Okay.
So they've taken out this new loan, and now they have to service this loan. The government
meaning
to pay back the debt.
Okay.
Now the government has taken out a loan. The government has to pay back this loan, but you living in Bangladesh, you never gave permission to take out the loan. You never had a vote in getting the loan. You never had to say take out this loan, but the money you use is getting deflated, getting destroyed, as a result of the decisions of the government.
So
that interest decision affected the people on the ground.
So if the money is becoming deflated, that means that inflated, sorry. That means I had £10 last year, and with it I could buy a meal for my family. Now £10,
Snicker bar.
I can get a Snicker bar with it. You know,
That's basically what it is.
I actually
and that is the tangible, visible economic damage of interest we can see today. Without, don't need to put any fantastic research. We all see it.
We lived it.
We all know it. We all live it.
I remember a bus ride was 20p.
But a lot of things. I remember there was such a thing as a penny sweet.
Penny sweets. I remember we used to say penny sweets.
Yeah.
We're gonna get some penny sweets.
I remember when I was young thinking being surprised there used to get multiple sweets for 1 penny.
Freddos for 5p. Used to say 5p on the packet.
Yeah, there you go. So,
and now it's like
I don't think there is such a thing as a penny sweet anymore.
Yeah. What's shocking is when you deep it, Freddo, it used to be 5p.
Yeah.
It's probably let's just say it's 50p now. So it's 10x in price.
Yeah.
Now we see.
Well, let me explain that. It hasn't actually changed in value.
The value is the same
of it, but the value as measured in your currency has changed. Yes.
And your wage doesn't go up.
Yeah, that's another discussion. So I mean, there's a whole cascade of things.
I'm just trying to show you what I wanted to do. Is I just wanted to just get to that point so people can see that's why that's a tangible, real life example of why Riba is so bad.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I guess another reason why people might struggle is because they don't see the direct correlation. I.e., I took out a mortgage. How did I damage the economy? I'm just one guy, man. There's like a million. There's like how many million people in the UK? I'm one person. I'm not really going to damage the economy. And it's true, your individual action hasn't actually moved the needle that we can see, but collectively it has.
Yeah.
As part of the whole, it has. Yeah.
If every single one of us,
if we all do the same thing,
a stick into a fire, eventually that fire is going to burn down the building.
It's like a match. One match can do a little bit of fire. Get a whole matchbox, they do a lot big, So every time you take out a loan, every time you do an interest-based contract, it has an effect on the economy for everything.
So it directly then affects our livelihood.
Of course, yeah.
And that's why now marriage is so expensive. Rent is so expensive.
Yeah.
Clothes are so expensive, and it's going to carry on happening. Yeah,
because because essentially
until it becomes so expensive that people can't afford it, and that's already happening in some countries.
It's already happening. Yeah,
I speak to my Shaykh in Egypt.
Well, when it gets to that stage, there's a reset. But go on.
Yeah, so I speak to my Shaykh in Egypt daily. So when this issue happened between Russia and Ukraine, and then obviously the West put sanctions and whatnot, and so on and so forth, I don't know exactly how, but since then Egypt just went.
Yeah, that's different though. That was different, and that's I don't want to get to the weeds of it because you can have inflation that has nothing to do with interest.
Oh, okay.
It's to do with supply shock. It's just a supply and demand. Because there's a supply shock.
Okay.
Even COVID that caused supply shock as well. That wasn't directly attached to.
Okay.
Because there's riba, that's why inflation. And actually, a large part of what we're feeling right now is primarily to do with the supply shock. Not to do with, I mean, interest is there and it is bubbling and it's gonna hit us hard soon. But there are other things that will cause things to go up. That's not directly attached to interest. So I don't want to get too confused.
So interest is like just putting the fuel over the fire.
Just again back to the issue of what I said to you before. If you want to just look at the one major harm or the one tangible harm of interest is that essentially you are spending your future. Meaning that you're spending, so basically in the future you can't.
I like that. I actually like the way you broke that down. Yeah.
So for example, we have 10 houses on our street and there are 20 people live in the house, living in that area, for example, or want to live in that area. So there's only 10 houses to go around 20 people. So if we all want to buy a house, we have to essentially bid to get the house. I have to put a price. The other person puts a price. That's why we have supply and demand. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But although there's 20 people in the town, not all 20 can afford the house. Mm-hmm. Let's just say that the price of the houses in that town is 100,000, but only, let's say 9 people, or let's say only 8 people can afford £100,000 for the house. So that means that 12 people effectively can't afford a house. So therefore 12 people are not in the market. Let's say that again. There's a town, that's the market. There's 10 houses in that market, in that town. And there are 20 people who want to live in that town. But only 8 people can actually afford to buy a house. So therefore, effectively, there are only 8 people in that market. The other 12 are not there. They're not in the market. So effectively, the price of that house is dictated by who can afford that. Yeah? So there's 8 people, there's 10 houses. So those last 2 people, so those 8 people bought a house. There's still 2 houses left in the market. And those other 12 can't afford it. So if they really want to sell their house, they can either wait until they can afford it, or they have to reduce their prices. That's how it works. But in that same process, in the same scenario, a bank comes into the town, sets up shop, and advertises, anyone who wants to buy a house, don't worry, we can help you out, we'll give you a loan. Don't worry. So now the market's changed. Now we don't just have 8 people in the market, we now have 20. Because although they couldn't afford it, because the bank is there, now they can. So now we have 20 people now trying to bid for these 10 houses. And they can't all have the house. So what do we have? We now have bidding wars. They have to pay more and more and more to try and get it, or get this house, because they can't all get the house. So by the fact that there's now more people in the market, there's more supply in the market, and there's obviously, there's not more supply. The supply is still 10, but there's more demand in the market that bids up the price. So when you say things get more expensive, that's the mechanism, that's the way in which things get more expensive, because by having the avenue of interest, you bring more people into the market that weren't in the market before. And because you have more people in the market, that bids up the price. And again, I don't want to get into the weeds of it, because obviously you always solve that. Here's a funny one. You can always solve that problem by just building more houses. You can always just say, okay, 10 houses, 20 people. One way to solve the problem is just to build 10 more houses.
Because I'll drop the price.
Well, I mean, I'm saying if there was 10 more houses, then you have 20 people competing for 20 houses.
Yeah.
That's supply and demand, equilibrium. But because you have...
Drop, right?
Well, you could do that, but technically speaking, if there's 20 people and 20 houses, then there's equilibrium. There's no high, it's not up or down.
Okay, yeah.
But I'm saying because there's now more people than there are houses, that causes the price to go up. Likewise, if there's more houses than there are people, prices go down. Okay. Because now the sellers are competing to get buyers. Yeah. So that's one of the effects of interest. By having mortgages available to people, that brings more people in the market that wouldn't be in the market. And I always say to people, if you were to remove banks, or if imagine you was a Taliban and you banned all interest, house prices would collapse. Why would they collapse? Because sellers have to come down to where people are. Unless you want to just not sell your house. You could do that. You could just not sell your houses. But there's always someone who wants to sell the house. They want to liquidate. They need to liquidate. So they have to bring their prices down to what people can afford. And that's why governments have these programs to help home ownership. They say it's to help you, but it's not really to help you. It's to help keep the prices high. To have these little programs. So one last point, just to conclude this point, just so people understand how these things work. Here's a case study. In Australia, the government gave this plan that in the next 5 years, any first-time homeowner or first-time buyer, we will give the deposit, as in the government will pay the deposit for you to get property. And that caused property sales to go through the roof. Because now these guys who couldn't afford a house, because they didn't have the deposit, the government will do that. And that caused houses to, the house price to shoot up and houses to sell through the roof. At the end of that 5-year program, sales of properties collapsed way below what it was before. Because essentially what I just said, those people who wanted to buy, who may have had to wait and buy later on, they could buy now. So essentially what they did is that they took the future buyers in the future and brought it forward today. Because remember, it also includes, by the way, those who did have the deposit, those who did have money, but just were first-time homeowners. So maybe someone was saving up. They were saying, look, your next 5 years, next 10 years, I'll buy a property. I'm saving up. This program comes out. Okay, bunda, I'll buy it now. So they had planned to do it later on.
Just bought it now.
But because they bought it now. So essentially, all these guys who were planning to buy later on, they essentially bought today. So when later on came, there were no buyers.
No buyers, okay, makes sense.
So if you look at the actual chart, you see this line go like this. And then when the end of the program, it slumped down to this.
Oh, snap.
And then eventually over time, it recovered. Because there was the people who were going to buy in this time period who had already bought. Now there was a void. Right. It was empty. There weren't people there.
People after that, then.
So essentially, in all this long talk, I would like to summarize that what riba does, it distorts the market. It corrupts the market. That essentially was the topic of talk I delivered in a Bitcoin Thailand conference. And also, we'll talk about later on, some ulama who came to discuss about, from Indonesia, to talk about Bitcoin, is that interest destroys the mizan.
Okay.
وإلى مدين أخاهم شعيبا. And to Madian, Allah sent Shu'aib. قال لا تعبدوا الله ما لكم إله غيره. Don't worship anyone but Allah. You're not God, but Allah. ولا تنقصوا المكيال والميزان. And don't diminish the measure, the sale measure. The mikyal, which is the kale, sale in volume, or mizan, the sale in weight. So one of the problems of the people of Shu'aib wasn't only shirk, but also the distortion and destruction of the markets by corrupting the mizan. Now we think of the destruction of the mizan as being, I bought 1 kilo of rice, but they gave me just less than a kilo. As in, I think it's a kilo, but it distorted the mizan. It gave me less than a kilo.
Yeah, 950 grams.
Yeah. So that's distorting the mizan. But there's another element of this corrupting the mizan. I actually gave you...
Mizan is the
scale.
The scale.
I actually gave you the full kilo. But the money I gave you is actually worth less. That's also another means of destroying the mizan. So there's 2 ways of destroying the mizan. Destroying the mizan in the measure of the product, or the measure of the wealth, the value that you're exchanging for. And that's what we live in today. Interest, the inflation we have in today, that's destruction of the mizan. So what the crime of the people of Shu'aib is the crime of today. Actually, ironically, if you actually think about it, ironically, all the crimes of all the Anbiya, all the nations before, each nation before had their own specific crime, whereas today they've actually collected all of them. They collected the crime of Qawm Lut
and made it worse.
I made it worse. The Qawm Lut, the crime of Shu'aib, Madian, the crime of arrogance. All of them, they collected all together into one.
And actually made it worse.
And made it worse, yeah, with the hubris. Anyway,
I think people of Lut, if they saw a tranny, they would have been back. They would have been baffed.
Anyway, so in conclusion, I think we've concluded this point about the evils of riba. We've concluded the evil of riba on a philosophical level, on an imani level, in terms of sin, and also on an economic level. Fundamentally, you're selling your future for today.
When you say philosophical, just so people don't get confused, do you mean
as in ideologically, yeah. But you can also say that also the economic side. So essentially, you're selling your future for today. And imagine you sold your whole future. Just look at it this way. If you sold your entire future, that is a definition of slavery.
And it's not just your future. I was watching a video.
Generational.
It's your grandkids' future. Like
generational, yeah.
They were saying, and this is one of the problems of living in an individualist, liberal society where you are the God. As Allah says, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. The one who took himself as a God. As in, you worship yourself. It's just you. You don't realize these loans that you're taking affects people around you. Kids that are going to be paying it back.
Yeah. And just that point there. Just subhanallah, that's a very profound point there. Just to expand on that, the loan you're taking out now is because it is affecting your grandkids.
Yeah, they're not paying it back, but it's affecting your grandkids. Yeah.
There is a known thing, even amongst non-Muslims, where they say that the boomers have destroyed it for Gen Z.
Yeah.
What they're saying is that what I mean by that is that the idea of getting mortgages for house properties began and exploded from the 60s, 70s onwards. So those who were born in the 60s and 70s effectively benefited by owning property that was cheaper then. Now the property has gone up exponentially higher, and these old guys have all got their properties and they're happy in their villas and whatnot. Their grandkids can't even get property now. Essentially, those in the 60s and 70s and the 80s already sold our future. Because in the 60s, this is a fact. This is an observable, acknowledged fact by non-Muslims even. They measure the ability for a nation to get property by wages. How many years does it take for a waged labor to earn the amount they need to buy property? In the 60s and 70s, it was about 3 to 4 years.
It could be a carpenter.
Yeah.
It could be a shopkeeper.
But the thing is, just 3 to 4 years of that wage was enough to buy a house.
And also a job that's that low.
Yeah,
well,
a normal everyday job,
right.
a labourer's job, not low, but just a labourer's job.
Yeah, but a labourer's job.
A labourer's job. Today, some places, let's say it's more than 15 years of wage. So gone from 3 years of your wages. I mean, when I say for your wages, I mean if you just saved everything, 3 years of your wages to buy property. So now, imagine 15 years. Think about that. Imagine that. It's 15 years
Not spending a penny.
of not spending a penny just to have the right to own a cheap flat. Isn't that crazy?
In a cruddy place.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, think of it this way: in England, in London, let's say a normal wage is 40,000 a year. To get 400,000, that takes you 10 years of not spending a penny, not even getting to work or back, and that's not even paying tax. You have to pay tax as well. Not even paying tax. So that's 10 years to get 400,000, and in London, you're looking at 500,000 and above to get a house. So you need therefore another, let's say 15 years. 15 years of not spending a single penny to get a property. That's what it is now. Whereas before, it took you just three years. That is literally the example. That's literally the tangible, physical reality of spending your future today. Those in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, they sold today long time ago. Now we're struggling to now sell the future of the next generation. So anyway, the point is
so sad because the oppression that comes from that, the people that end up in poverty or not being able to make ends meet or getting into debt, and that.
Well, the thing is, it builds up kindling. It builds up a situation whereby it just takes a spark to burn it all down. Because, for example, if let's have a look at this, yeah. How can it go wrong? How can it collapse? Because the thing is, it's a Ponzi. You know what a Ponzi is?
Yeah.
A Ponzi is basically something that has to get bigger and bigger and bigger, because if you try to contract it, it collapses. It has to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So
it's just spending the money of everyone else. Put
property prices have to keep on going higher and higher and higher. There's no scenario
where it goes down.
Listen carefully. Anyone who tells you otherwise, they're lying to you. There is no scenario whereby the government can say we're trying to reduce property prices, trying to make it easy for you to. That doesn't exist. It can't happen. Why?
By the very nature of the system.
Because I've taken out a loan, mortgage on this property. The rahan, the guarantee of this loan, is the property. If the property value becomes less than what you owe me, that's called negative equity. They foreclose you. So if the property prices of the market starts to dip low enough, millions are losing their property.
And what they're going to do to facilitate the higher prices, keep creating money that doesn't exist.
It has to go higher,
which
and higher and higher,
more inflation.
And higher. And the joke is, this is artificial.
The way to get out of this is Bitcoin. Inshallah, what you're going to talk about.
And the issue is that the property prices, because they're deliberately being inflated, the wages can't keep up with that. That's why you find a divergence where property is going up and wages are not. There's actually a chart I've seen whereby if you divide the value of gold by the value of, I think, property or the stock market, in the last 20 to 30 years, it's been the same.
Yeah.
If you look at the price of property in fiat, you see it's a straight line up.
Oh, but property in gold's been like this?
It's been exactly the same.
Oh, wow.
Meaning, what they're trying to say is, even
the value of the property hasn't actually gone up.
Nothing actually changed.
Nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed in the last 20 to 30 years. All that's really happened is your value of your money's been going down.
That's insane. You're saying
yeah. So basically, when you
same amount of gold that I could purchase a property for
So hold on,
Years ago.
hold on. Let me just make it a caveat. I'm not sure if it's to do with property or the stock market or one of the two. I'm not sure if it's
But
because
either way,
when people think of making money, all they're really doing is just staying afloat because the fiat value is just going down. That's what it is. That's what it is. Your yield is just about keeping the value already earned.
I remember my wife, when I married her, she always just wanted a Chanel handbag. She always just wanted a Chanel handbag.
Mm-hmm. Has she got it?
So I didn't buy it for her.
Yeah.
So she bought it herself.
MashaAllah.
I think it was with the amount of money or something. Back then it was only £2,000. By the way, I boycott all French brands because they insult the Prophet ﷺ. It's France. Like, anything French, just I'm not enforcing on anyone, but I just don't do that no more. But anyway. And there's a thing about women, my wife, she always tells me, there's a thing amongst sisters, which is like, buy these bags. Buy these bags because they go up in price.
Yeah.
Because now that same Chanel handbag, £4,500.
Wow.
Just a decade, just 10 years.
Wow.
Right? And every single year, it's known, every year, Chanel handbags go up. And it's not just Chanel, Hermes, Louis Vuitton, all of them.
So the iPhone. I mean, do you remember iPhone 4 was 500 quid?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, that was it. Now it's 1,500 or so for the Pro version.
But in essence, what you're saying is, so if you buy the Chanel handbag in hopes for it to be an investment for the price to go up, let's say to double in 10 years, and then you sell it, with that 5K, it's not like you've made any extra. You've made extra money, but you've not actually increased in value.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. So
what dead investment?
Well, that's actually kind of true. It gets worse than that.
Sisters, man, wallahi.
Wait, it gets worse than that because a bag, you don't need a bag.
Yeah.
Let's actually go back to the property.
Yeah.
If I bought a property in 1980s for 60,000, and I've sold it now today at £500,000, and I'm saying to myself, MashaAllah, I've made like 500 quid, £500,000 profit. That's a massive profit. Not really, because I have to live somewhere. So if I move somewhere and I buy another property, I'm going to spend the exact same amount. The only way to really benefit from that property or that money that's technically gone up is to buy somewhere smaller.
Yeah.
To go downgrade. Because if you sold your property, I bought a 3-bed house in the 80s for £50,000, and I sold it now for £500,000. And I want to buy another 3-bed in the same area, I'm spending the same amount. So I actually haven't made anything.
In terms of value, like the number has changed, but the value in terms of the purchasing.
What I could do with it is the same.
What you can do with it is the same.
Exactly the same. Yeah.
It's like if I had 5p, I could catch a bus ride when I was 5, 6.
Yeah. But if you bought that ticket, a travel card, that back then, I can still use it today.
It used to be £1. Do you remember the 4-day travel card?
Well, I remember
£1.
Well, I remember actually the days when you used to get the rubber and change the date. That's what I remember back in the day. Anyway, so back to the point. So anyway, let's conclude this point. So the interest, it destroys the economy. It destroys the value. And I equate it down to the issue of what happened with Shu'aib, of the corruption of the Mizan. Allah Shu'aib said to his people specifically, worship Allah and don't destroy the Mizan. Don't destroy the scales. As in, this was mentioned together. Because it's a societal level destruction. You're destroying a society at the whole level, not just on the whole level. This is the same thing that's happening now. You're actually destroying the economy of whole people, whole nations. So in conclusion, I'm sure we can acknowledge at some level the interest is damaging.
Damaging.
And damaging. You may not recognize it on an individual level, but if we're all doing the same thing, it adds up.
I'll just maybe end with this story, unless you want to add anything on. I actually know, I know a family who was doing well financially. Like they were healthy, and they took out a loan with Riba. And I remember going to him and saying, "Don't do this, man. Fear Allah. You know it's haram. It's not even like you don't know. You know it's haram. I'm in a sticky situation. Stuck." I said, "Bro, be patient. Have sabr. Allah will find a way out for you." Right? They took the loan. Akhi, Shaykh, when I say I never saw someone fall from so high so quickly.
SubhanAllah.
Not just financially, in every way, shape, or form. The family got destroyed, split up. Sicknesses, diseases, sihr, struggling till today.
I mean, I even another example. We all have these stories.
Yeah.
But I know in a family who one person took
And
out.
I'm saying it was immediate.
Oh wow.
Like it took the loan,
Yeah.
direct consequence
I mean, even
of what they did with the money that came from the loan.
Yeah. I even know. I have you heard of a family who was someone took out a loan for their business,
Allah,
and then COVID happened, which affected their business, which we weren't able to pay out the loan, and because there's so many things connected to it, and the stress of it, they ended up committing suicide. And you can't imagine the impact of that on the family, on the wife, on the kids, on the brothers, on the sisters. And the thing is, I mentioned it as an example, as if to say this is unique. It's not unique, it's normal, man. This happens all the time. People kill themselves all the time because of, why? Because they see the debts piling up and they know there's no escape. I know that every day it's going to get worse and worse and worse. Because it's almost like, if I took out a loan that I can't pay back, but it's fixed, at least I know that with time I can etch away at it, you know. But if it's a loan with interest, bruv, I know that with time it's just gonna get worse. That will destroy your view of life. That's destroying your future. Literally destruction of your future. So on a psychological level, there's so many things.
It's suffice to say the Prophet ﷺ used to consistently seek refuge with Allah from debt.
Yeah.
And it's actually really, really profound when you ponder how many different adhkar of the Prophet ﷺ he's seeking refuge with Allah from debt.
Yeah.
And the one that really blew my mind is the dhikr before you sleep. Oh Allah, you're the Lord of the heavens and the earth, our Lord of everything. I seek refuge with you from all of the evil that exists. Allahumma anta al-awwal falaysa qablaka shay. Allahumma anta al-akhir walaysa ba'daka shay.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful dua. You're mentioning Allah about all these characteristics, and at the end it's what? Oh Allah, protect us from debt and save us from poverty.
SubhanAllah.
Like the debt is such a big thing.
Yeah.
It's such a big thing. The Prophet, because to a point where a Sahabi asked the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, how often you seek refuge with Allah from debt? Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-ma'tham wal-maghram. How often you do this? And the Prophet said, because when a person is in debt, it will lead him to lying. Just that's what debt will do to you, let alone debt.
Compounded debt.
Compounding.
Yeah.
Which is compounding. Like a person dies, if he's a martyr, he will be prevented from accessing the rewards of a martyr if he died with debt, the Prophet said.
Mm-hmm.
That's debt, normal debt. That's normal debt.
You know,
now you're taking debt with the interest.
One last thing though, just before we can close. One thing I find fascinating about interest, the topic of interest, is that whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim, everyone understands the evils of interest. Everyone gets it. The only people who don't get it, and maybe you could say this is feigning ignorance, who don't get it, are those who are receiving the interest. That's fascinating. As in, if you go to anyone on the streets in London, it doesn't matter if there could be EDL, there could be anyone, any normal person. If they're just a normal person, 9-to-5 job, paid.
If it's bad, they'll say yes.
They'll say yeah, it's bad. It's only the guys who make profit from the system. I'll say, oh, it's good, it's good. But you won't find a person who's you won't really find a person, an everyday Joe, who's normal grafting and then doing his work, saying yeah, interest is great and blah. They'll say no, that's predatory. They'll acknowledge it's predatory. I just find it fascinating that there is that fitrah. Only if you're corrupted by being incentivized by making profit, you change your fitrah. But everyone's fitrah is that interest is like we said last time, it's unnatural. That's probably a good way to end it, isn't it?
Well, I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope it's been enlightening and eye-opening for people. You know, one of the things I really admire about what you're doing, mashallah, tabarakallah, is an area that most people that most of us have neglected in terms of the da'wah. which is the financial circumstance, the economic circumstance of the Muslims, it's been heavily neglected. And it's sad because this is like, in every single second of your day, you're in a transaction. So I really appreciate the time that you're taking out for the Muslims to do research and explain these masail, and also the work with regards to crypto, which we're going to talk about in another discussion, inshallah ta'ala.
Inshallah.
And I remember just sitting with you. We were talking about Bitcoin maybe about 5-6 years ago, 7 years ago, and I just remember you talking about riba and how much you hated it and your disdain for it, and it hit me, because obviously me, the da'wah that I had been primarily involved in was with guys on the streets. They're selling drugs, they're drinking, sleeping with women, killing each other, violence, all that type of stuff, right? Which is bad, of course. But it's like you become habituated to certain sins and you don't realize, oh wait, there's that other thing that the ummah's bleeding out from as well.
Yeah.
So just want to say Jazakallahu khairan, and may Allah Azza wa Jalla reward you for holding down that front for us.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair.
Barakallah fi.
Jazakallah khair. Alhamdulillah.
With that said, inshallah ta'ala, guys, we have a lot more to discuss on this topic. Inshallah, we hope to have Ustad Muaawiyah with us. Inshallah, multiple different sessions, inshallah ta'ala. I'd encourage you guys in the meantime to watch the video that we did on zakat. You can see it on screen. Go check it out, inshallah ta'ala. And we will, look out for the next video that's going to come out on what is riba, and also the video on how Bitcoin is a solution to riba. With that said, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.